Welcome to our conversation around relationships and difference. This particular conversation is going to help you in your ability to do two things. One is to get a tremendous amount of things done within your organization without burning yourself out. And the second that we'll wrap up with is learning how to deal with people different from yourself. So we'll have these two conversations and they both link together. On the networking side, I had the opportunity to work with this good-looking guy. Rob Cross used to be at the University of Virginia. Now he's at Babson, and he also is the director of the Networking Roundtable. When I introduce him in the workshops we do together, I say, this guy is very, very unique. He may be a one-off on the planet. He's a super geek with a personality. So not only is he whip smart and understands the technical side of how to get stuff analyzed, but he has the ability to relate to people, which is extremely cool. So the information I'm going to provide you on network is about 90% based on Rob Cross's work. He has a series of books published. He has several articles in Harvard Business Review. And if you want to dig deeper into this information of Rob's that I'm sharing with you, I would invite you to visit those sites. So there are three areas that we're going to explore. One is managing a network within the organization. Then we'll move to the level of analysis of you as a person within an organization and developing your networks. And then we're going to talk about how you project energy into a network in which you're involved. So managing a network, it's interesting if you look at the slide, there's the org chart on the left side, which is very formal. It tells who relates to who. But then you do a network analysis, and then there's the informal structure. And when Rob does his analysis, he does an organizational survey, and pretty much a very complex process comes down to who goes to who to get critical information. Who goes to who to get things done, and then he maps those out, and you can see that how things get done in the organization looks very different from the formal power structure and the way that an organization perceives that things get done. Digging even deeper, you can go in and take a look at, as a leader or as a manager, mapping your network. And then you say, all right, who within our organization is a central connecting point to get things done. So if you look at the cluster on the left, you can see that there are a couple people, one in particular that almost everybody goes to either directly or through somebody else to get information. But then when you take a look at your map and you're saying, all right, we have to approach this issue across the organization, cross-functionally, cross-regionally, cross-globally, or even outside of the organization, who is it that can build the bridges to other clusters or other groups within our organization or without to get things done? So again, we can take a very quantitative approach to a soft side of the organization. It gets a bit more complicated, and here you can see that effective leaders get work done by knowing who is at the center of the communication within the network. Then they build silo breakers, bridge builders that are starting to connect the groups. But Rob said it's also very, very important to take a look at who's on the edge. Who are some of these outsiders that aren't necessarily connecting to the group in the flow of information, and do they have critical knowledge that the whole network needs to be able to access? And if so, as a manager leader, we go to the edge and we bring the edge into the center. So again, a very quantitative approach to taking a look at the network within your organization. And if you go and connect up to Rob's work, a lot of what he has is free source. So you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars with a consultancy in order to get access to that information. He also spends a lot of time talking about the overload points within the organization. And we need to be paying attention to this because you can have somebody that is so good that in fact you're going to burn them out. They also can get in a situation where they can slow down the flow of information because everybody's going to that one person to get things done or to get information. So from a human standpoint, we have to tend to the people that are at the overload point so we don't burn them out emotionally or physically. And from a structural standpoint, we have to remove the bottleneck within the organization that they represent. So again, there's a structural solution, there's a relationship solution, and then there's a skill building so that there's expertise beyond that. So again, take a look at how work is flowing, take a look at who's connecting to who, and have them have an opportunity to build relationships around that person, and then create skill sets so there isn't just one go-to person within the organization. So managing a personal network, it's all about delegating down. So the suggestion is, as a manager leader, you are continually driving down the decisions and information providing to the lowest level of competency. And you want to develop open networks so that information is flowing throughout the organization, so that there's balance within the organization, that power isn't centered around one department or one individual, so that things can be done. You want to build quality connections between the people. A lot of that can be done socially, so having events so people get to know each other. They build higher levels of trust like we talked about. And Rob tells the story of one individual that was in the middle. He called him Scott. And this was the go-to guy that within that whole massive communication flow within the organization, Scott was at the center of it. So even people out on the edge came to Scott to get things done. When Rob worked with him, he said that his health was deteriorating. His family life was under stress. His relationships within the organizations were not healthy. He was becoming a jerk. And that his group performance was also suffering. That because it was all about him, other people within the group were not feeling engaged, and that created a tremendous amount of conflict and tension within the group. So they took a look at what it is that he was doing, and you can see on the map that there's a number of things that could start to be shed. One simple thing like capital request and justification. Does he have to touch each request for expenditures? I met with one executive that said he had $100,000 signature approval within the organization, but the way that the organization was set up is he had to get 3 more signatures even though he had the signature to do that. And there was one person in particular that all requests had to go through that person. So again, structurally you can start to unwind this knot of being overburdened within the organization. And some of the things that he did through some coaching is he sent other people to meetings so he didn't suffer from meeting overload. That he began to ask more questions and not be the answer giver at all times, which built his team to have to think about solving problems on their own. He was also far more selective on the problems where he focused his attention. Somebody else is critical is not necessarily the organization's critical, so don't buy into the panic that they're bringing to the table. Again, to be more cautious in improving the employee's plans for actions. And if somebody came to him with an idea, his rule of thumb was if it doesn't have a minimum of a 20% or 25% improvement or positive impact, we're not going to get distracted by that particular project. And he focused on diving into conflict earlier. So tension with the teams, he got them together and resolved it before it had a chance to fester and become dysfunctional. And then he started to use technology to get information out so people weren't burdening him where he was saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. So again, that was very, very helpful. We can take a look at the structural side, and these are just some ideas for you to think about. So again, shedding decisions that aren't necessarily critical. How can you make more information available within the organization? Can you shift part of your role to others? Do you make sure that the filtering system isn't distorting what's going on and that you're getting and giving information that's important? Do you have buffering mechanisms, gatekeepers, so that people aren't coming directly to you all the time for information, that somebody's making sure that the people that are on your calendar are mission critical? Are you sharing your vision and coordinating it on a very, very regular basis? And then are you clear about who has decision authorities and who has the ability to represent you and make a decision in the meetings that are taking place? So again, some tests on effective collaborator, somebody that's managing their network so they're not burning themselves out. On a behavioral side, again, do you drive decisions down to the lowest level of competence? Are you being too responsive or too quick to jump into other people's problems? Are you creating reliance on your expertise, or are you training others or developing others to handle issues? Are you holding people accountable for executing what's going on? Again, do you act quickly to deal with issues that are getting in the way of collaboration? Do you make the decisions you could and need to? And are you making them quickly? You know, particularly today where things are moving so fast, we have to make decisions and trust in our ability to respond if it isn't exactly perfect. When you're making suggestions to employees, do you help focus them on what's critical and what they need to be paying attention to? Are you creating conditions where each employee's feeling ownership of the issue? Remember, we talked about in motivation, there's that significance, that ownership that's critical to motivation. And then do you have face-to-face communication? Remember, we talked about in our communication conversation how critical it is for you as a manager, as a leader, to take the time to sit down and talk to people face-to-face in a very human way. And do you manage your emails and other forms of electronic communication in a way that's critical? So kind of a summary, you manage at the center, you manage at the edge, you minimize silos, and these are some good ideas for you to think about. And then you build flexibility or creativity within your organization, and you push back hard on that human tendency to become insular, particularly when your organization is going through significant change. Remember, we talked about the siloing effect and how that's human. So as a manager or leader, we need to help people resist their normal human tendency. So then we take a look at, you're in a network and you have a reputation, and you tend to be categorized in one of two ways. You're categorized as an energy giver. You walk in a room and the rep up and says, Jose is here. This is really exciting. and everybody kind of looks at the desk. They get another cup of coffee or tea, or they're doing other things because you are sucking the energy out of the room. So when you take a look at that, energizers are what you want to aspire to be. So when you walk into a meeting, you walk into a one-on-one conversation, you want to energize the people around you because you're going to get more from them from that meeting. People tend to be more innovative when they're dealing with energized people. They are more creative. And energizers tend to win out when you go out and try to recruit people. Energizers are able to attract more customers to the product. It's just a very exciting environment for you to be in and for you to bring that to your team. And people have a sense of well-being and satisfaction at work, and they tend to learn from each other when an energizer is involved. That also spills over. It's contagious. So when people are high energy, they tend to create other high energy people in their work team. So here's some questions for you. Do you connect with others as human beings, or are they just units of labor? Do you do what you say you were going to do? Do you have a reputation of being trustworthy and having integrity? Are you mindful or heedful of the needs of others, so it isn't just all about you? You're paying attention to other people's needs? Are you fully engaged when you have a conversation, or are you busy texting or doing something else? So when I have a conversation with you, I know you're paying attention to what I have to say and what my needs are. And are you constantly looking for opportunities to get things done? So again, if you're getting low scores in any one of those, time to look in the mirror, step back, and say, all right, I got to work on this particular behavior. Or are you the de-energizer? Are you the person that walks in the room and the air is sucked out of the room and people are thinking, when is this meeting going to be over? When can I get away from this evil force? So some of the characteristics of a de-energizer, they're always looking for why we can't do that, and they're critical of anything that's said. They don't create opportunities for others to be valued and to feel like they're engaged in the organization. They're very rigid in their thinking. They show very, very little concern about people around them, and people get the sense that even if they're trying to demonstrate concern, it's fake. They don't come through with commitments. You can't trust them. And they simply just get louder when people don't listen. So they just keep raising the tone of the voice and talking over people. So again, this is the do not do sheet. And if you're getting high scores in any of those, time for some self-reflection. So putting the pieces together, we have foundational behaviors that we want to take a look at when we're putting together our personal network. And then we also, you can take a look at these. These are some of our interactions that we have within our network. Networking, like communication, is hard work. But from my bias, you need to have that at top of mind. It should be on the top of your to-do list. When I coach executives, I push them back really hard to tell me the number of phone calls they made out into their network to make sure that they're staying connected. Let's take a brief look now at difference within the organization. What I'm going to provide to you is a different perspective. My study and my experience is this is very, very hard work. That in spite of all the kumbaya language, all the we are all one language, humans are not wired to operate that way. So when you take a look at biological evolution, you take a look at brain function, when we're exposed to somebody different, we place them into some hard categories, and training yourself to look at them differently takes hard work. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, but to deal with difference takes effort. So again, I think there's the illusion that all we have to do is sit together in a room and we're all going to come together. So we have to recognize that as human beings, we categorize people and events based on our past experience, and we have to take the effort to work past our perceptions of the world. It's important enough now that Harvard Business Review has been publishing a number of articles about bringing difference together, bringing difference into teams. And this recent article says if you're going to have an effective team, remember we talked about in constructing it, we need difference beyond just race, gender, religious backgrounds. And they said that these are some ways that people think, what they value, and to bring power to a group, you want to have these kinds of people on those teams. When you do have difference, as a manager or leader, it's your responsibility to help people feel included. So here's some tips on what you can do to make that happen. Part of it is, number 4, reaching out and making sure that all people are engaged and acknowledged. And it's oftentimes the people that are different from the majority are going to become very quiet. So again, as a leader, as a manager, it's our job to make sure that they're engaged. You want to come out as an ally to those people that are different so they don't feel alone. Make sure that they can come to you and have candid conversations. You can see some of the others. I added number 8 on my own, and this is some experience that I had and some research I did very, very early on. And if you're a manager or a leader, when you're bringing someone different into a team or into a group, do not bring one person. Do not bring 2. That the dynamics show us that if you bring 3, they can support each other. 1 is feeling like an outlier. 2, there may be competition between them. If you have 3, you now have a support network for them. And years ago, we were bringing women into management roles in some fairly male-dominated environments. And I'd read this book very early on, and I heeded that advice, and it was remarkable how effective that was. So you need to be thinking differently from my perspective about diversity. And we want to find and include people in our life that are outside of our educational or technical field. We need to include in our universe people you don't like. And you want to include people that have no experience in your field to come in and take a look at what you're doing with fresh eyes. And then you want people that have no filters. So bring in those radical folks that are politically incorrect and they just tell you as they see it. If you do that, you're going to create a very dynamic team, but trust me, you're going to work very hard. Thanks a lot.